evening, everyone. Welcome back to Karen's Vibes. How are you guys doing? Hope you guys doing okay. How is your Sunday doing? Well, we had a lot of rain today. A lot of rain. My God, one piece of, as I said, piece of thunder lick a while ago, early on. Nearly jump out my shoes. Had to run and turn off the breakers. Turn the breaker off. But anyway, welcome back. It has been a long time. Couple of weeks. But you know my story, I'm always busy. But anyway, hope you guys are doing well, doing okay. Alright, so let's get into it without further ado. Alright, so as I usually say, grab your tea, grab your drink, and let's get on with it. I'm actually sitting in the garage. The out here is cool. Inside of the garage is always cool. Alright, so we had stopped at, so the name of the book, first of all, is Minty Alley. Minty Alley, written by C.L.R. James and narrated by me, moi, Karen Ware. Alright, so we had started reading, we had finished chapter 24, and then we had started reading chapter 25. We had stopped in the, we had stopped near to the ending of chapter 25, so we're just gonna pick up from there. So if you've been following me, that's great. Those who have not been following me, you can actually go on my YouTube page, which is Karen Vibes. So that's Karen Vibes with an exclamation sign, and you can just follow my reading from there. You can pick up on my stories. Alright, so we had stopped at the ending of, near to the ending of chapter 25. So we're just gonna pick up from where we left off. So we're just gonna pick up from where we left off. Alright, so let's start back from here. This is the end of you. I don't care, she said. Her willful blindness to the consequences of her madness infuriated him. Damn you to hell, Maisie. Could you think of other people a little? Couldn't you think of me? He had been so happy. So this was the part where this gentleman had come to see Mrs. Rose. And Maisie had stalled him and then make him leave, and then Miss Rose didn't get to see him. So as I say, if you want to just follow me, just go on my YouTube page and you can pick up from there. I don't want to confuse you. So let's start again right from here. This is the end of you. I don't care, she said. Her willful blindness to the consequences of her madness infuriated him. Damn you to hell, Maisie. Couldn't you think of other people a little? Couldn't you think of me? He had been so happy. Life was moving so smoothly, and now... Wait, hold on. I am so sorry. My apologies. No, something is wrong here. No, so Maisie was talking to the last part of Maisie was talking to Haynes. Right? And Haynes was saying to Maisie that Miss Rose is going to murder you because the man that came to see Mrs. Rose, Maisie run him away. So Haynes is talking to her and telling her she shouldn't have done that. Alright. So his Haynes talking to her, and then she's saying, I don't care, she said. Her willful blindness to the consequences of her madness infuriated him. Damn you to hell, Maisie. Couldn't you think of other people a little? Couldn't you think of me? He had been so happy. Life was moving so smoothly, and now... You haven't done anything. What is it to you? I didn't want him here, and I wouldn't have him here. And don't damn me, Mr. Haynes. I have never heard you damn anyone before, and you mustn't begin with me. I'll damn you when I please. He looked at his watch. Come on, dress yourself. I have to be here. I have to be here when Mrs. Rose learns about this. If I'm not here, she'll kill you. Kill who? She? All this hatchet and knife business is only a lot of style she makes. Don't argue. You have to leave the place with me. Here is some money. Go to the pictures and mind you, don't you show your nose in this house until after 5. All right, boss, all right, said Maisie. Hurry up. I'm not leaving here until I see you out of this place. Yes, Captain, said Maisie, but she moved quickly away. In 3 minutes she was out. Don't pass by Argyle Street. You may meet her. Go down the avenue. All right, Mr. Haynes, but before I go, Mr. Haynes, she was in one of her rarely serious moods. What is it? I'm sorry, Mr. Haynes, to cause you all this trouble. You're not vexed with me? I am damn vexed. Don't stop here talking. You make all this trouble and I have to get you out of it. Maisie turned and walked away with slow steps and head down. Haynes began to be sorry for her, but hardened his heart and rode past her on his bicycle without turning to look. He had to teach her a lesson. He worked that afternoon with feverish haste and anxiety. Maisie rang him up and he answered, telling her that if she went home before he did, he would never speak to her again. She gave a very docile, all right, and he slammed the receiver down. If she was wretched, she had every right to be. He would make it up with her sometime, but not until this business was settled. He rode home as fast as he could, but when he reached, did not go straight in, but leaned his bicycle against the side of the house He rode home as fast as he could, but when he reached, did not go straight in, but leaned his bicycle against the side of the house. There was no sound of any disturbance as he was going quietly across the yard to get into his room. Mrs. Rose called to him from the dining room, and he stopped, nervous but ready. Mr. Haynes, you will not guess what happened here today. But there was no sign of anger on her face. Triumph, rather. Mr. Ben came back here this afternoon. Ben, said Haynes. Yes, sir, Ben. Come right back like a dog to eat his vomit, said Mrs. Rose. Go in, Mr. Haynes, I'm coming to tell you. She followed him into the room and sat down. She didn't know yet, at any rate. Yes, sir. Come right back here this afternoon. But I knew he was coming, you know. He had to come. But let me tell you, I went to town to see my solicitor. I went to town to see my solicitor about some business. I had been trying to fix all the week. They keep me there longer than I thought, you know. How these solicitors are disgusting. And up to now the man ain't tell me anything. Then he tell me to come back next week. I drop off the car here about 1:30, and I come straight in. Well, as I reach to go up the step, I hear, Alice, Alice. I turned round and I see the man standing up in the yard. Mr. Haynes, can you imagine? From the day the man leave here, I haven't seen him up to that hour. You could have knocked me down with a feather. And if you had run a pin into me, I don't think you would have got a drop of blood. Anyway, I pulled myself together, you know. God give me courage, and I asked him, what you want here? You have no right here. And I watch him. He said, I come to see you. I tell him, go to your wife. She is the one you have to see now. And I turn my back on him and walk into my bedroom. I sit down on the bed. I was feeling upset, Mr. Haynes. So I lean my head on the bed like that. Then I suddenly feel somebody standing over me. And when I look up, it was he. Into the bedroom. Into the bedroom. You ever could imagine, Mr. Haynes, that the man so barefaced? I face him stern. You have no right here, I say. I will call the police to put you out if you don't go. He said, yes, I know you will call the police. I hear you, and the police very nice. I hear you, and the police very nice. Oh, so him talking about the other man that came to see Miss Rose. Okay. I hear you, and the police is very nice. Is that bring me up here today? Sergeant Parks, he mean, Mr. Haynes. I tell him, yes, I have a protector now. So don't think you can take advantage of me. He tell me he hear I was going to take somebody and he come to find out if it's true and not to do it. Well, I never, said Haynes, and seeing Maisie standing in the yard, felt his heart sink. She had just reached her. She had just reached. Her hat was still on. Imagine that man, Mr. Haynes. But that is not all. I am telling you, I tell him, you're not ashamed, McCarthy, to come here and come into this bedroom to ask me questions? Man, you ain't afraid God strike you down, he said. If God ain't strike me down already, he wouldn't strike me down again. I tell him, ha, is your conscience pricking you now? But your troubles ain't begin yet, boy. Wait. He talked a little bit, then he turned the conversation. He said, but tell me, Alice. Alice, to my friends, I tell him, not you. He ain't say anything to that. He only stopped a little bit, then he went on. Tell me you're not going to take him. Mr. Haynes, I look at the man, all his big punch gone, his eyes red, his clothes dirty, his face with a lot of hair on it. He looked like a fowl that fall in a barrel of molasses. Oh, that is so funny. Never heard that term before. He looked like a fowl that fall in a barrel of molasses. You know, Mr. Haynes, how bright Mr. Ben used to be when he stepped out from here long ago. But where I reach, yes, he asked me if I'm going to take parts. I tell him, it's none of your business. What you have to do with that? He said, Alice, wherever I go, I see you before me. I tell him, and you will see me to your dying day. And then I went for him, Mr. Haynes. I tell him all I was to him and all I do for him and how he treat me. I tell him, look at your condition. What care is the woman taking of you? You think when you was with me, I would see you leaving this house looking at you looking now? Never. When you was with me, you was somebody. But look at you now. Who respects you? You are nobody. You have an old prostitute for your wife. You can't walk a street in the town without meeting a man who live with that woman. You take and give your name. Mr. Haynes, I give him good, and he ain't say a word. He hang his head like a dog. So when I finish, he said, tell me, promise me you're not going to take him. I'm going to take him, I tell him. He said, I'll prevent you. You catch a little spirit now. You are mine until death. Hear they know, people? He said, never in this life. I tell him. I tell him. He said, never in this life. I tell him. I stand up, for he rose my spirit. Haynes could guess how she stood up and how she looked at him. But if she had driven away Ben for Park, she would rend Maisie limb from limb when she heard. I cow him, Mr. Haynes. I cow him down, for I had God on my and when I call, he pick up himself and walk out. So you have triumphed over both of them, said Haynes. God will it so, said Mrs. Rose. He haven't kept me long. At 5:30, to Haynes' surprise, Miss Atwell, who never got home until long after 7, came hurrying into the yard. I am in at Mr. Haynes, Miss A, called Mrs. Rose. What you doing here so early? Hey, my dear. Good afternoon, Mr. Haynes. Excuse me, Mr. Haynes. So, my Rose, I hear the man come back. Phyllis had come up, heard the news, and the overworked girl had gone half a mile out of her way to tell Miss Atwell. As soon as she tell me, I tell the boss that I get message, somebody very sick at home, and I come up to here. Beads of perspiration covered her face, and she fanned herself vigorously. Mrs. Rose repeated the interview, almost word for word, Miss Atwell making the appropriate ejaculations of astonishment, execration, admiration, here and there, suggesting that Mrs. Rose should have said, or what Miss Atwell would have said. And everybody know Miss Atwell stay already. God was testing you, Mrs. Rose, to see if you have learned your lesson. But if you hadn't, you would have been chastised with whips and scorpions. The audacity of the man. Want to come back now and think he have only to wiggle his finger for you to come running, eh? Run is running now like the fox who lose his tail. You want to come back, the venomous reptile. Mrs. Rose, I used to hear them girls in the kitchen say that if he did come back, you was going to take him. But I know you had better sense than that. You are a good woman. You talk to him, but I'd see him in the gutter with the dogs licking his sores and I wouldn't notice him. Take him back, Miss Atwell. I take him back. The whole island would laugh at me. I won't know how to walk the street. And if I take him back now after what he do me, he have a right to kill me this time. Take him back? Never, never see the day. Haynes heard Archer's deep voice at the door. Madame, the sergeant say he here to see you. Sergeant Parks had returned. Haynes braced himself for the ordeal. Before he come to bomb, here you know. Haynes braced himself for the ordeal. What would happen, he did not know. All he knew was that he had to stand by and use his influence to stem the foaming torrent of Mrs. Rose's righteous wrath. There was going to be a hell of a row, but he felt that difficult as it might be and awkwardly as the situation might develop, he could manage Mrs. Rose. It would be hard, damn hard, but he could do it. He was watching her face intently. Did she know? Hardly. How would she greet her future partner? To his astonishment, a slight expression of annoyance flitted across her face. Why that old man only bothering me? Tell him I am busy and I can't see him. But Sergeant Parks, hat in hand and whiskers in evidence, was already by the door. A grey but well-preserved military-looking man in the late 50s. His whiskers were certainly not attractive, but Haynes liked his face. Nor did he look one who had come to complain about his ill treatment of the morning. He had more important matters in hand. Suddenly, Mrs. Rose cut him off from Haynes' view. With a sudden movement, she went and stood in the doorway. "I am sorry, Mr. Parks," she said decisively, "but I am afraid that we won't be able to come to any arrangement." Haynes could not see Parks, but the others told him afterwards what he looked like. Miss Atwell raised her hands in horrified amazement. "But Mrs. Rose," said Parks. "I have considered everything, Mr. Parks," said Mrs. Rose firmly. "I am sorry," and she turned her back into the room. "Man only bothering me," she said. "I don't want to have anything to do with any man." "He's gone?" Haynes asked. Miss Atwell looked out. "Yes, he looks as if he's gone. Archer, the gentleman, gone?" "Yes," said Archer. There was a silence. Mrs. Rose's hands lay idle in her lap, and her eyes were on the floor. "But I thought you was going to take him," said Mrs. Atwell at last. "I am too old for that sort of thing now. I had 2 experiences, and that is enough for me. It's the third attack that kills. The third attack that kills." So we're at so this is the ending of chapter 26. Maisie coming to the door on some pretext chose her moment skillfully, and under Mrs. Rose's unsuspecting nose gave Haynes a wink of exquisite triumph. So you see, all the foolishness that Maisie did went under the carpet because Mrs. Rose never found out. So that is good. Alright, so that's the end of chapter 26. We're going to read some more. So we're at chapter 27 now. Ben, defeated in the attempt to re-establish a footing in number 2, began another series of persecutions directed against Mrs. Rose. Once for a period of 2 or 3 weeks, scarcely a day passed without somebody coming in and offering to buy number 2 at some absurd price. It was in vain. Mrs. Rose protested that she was not selling. All told her that it was freely rumored in town that the place was now for sale. Next, Mr. Rojas came to see her. He said that a woman had come to see him and asked him to lend her some money to buy a property in the suburbs. She did not have all the money, but she would give him a mortgage on the building she was about to purchase. Asked where the house was, she named it as number 2, Minty Alley. Rojas told her he was sure she had made a mistake. She said no, she had sent someone to valet the place and interview the owner, who was anxious to sell as she was leaving the island soon. It was easy to prove that Ben had sent her. It was all stupid, as Mrs. Rose could not possibly sell without Mr. Rojas knowing. But Mrs. Rose said that the idea was to maintain a lot of talk and bother about number 2, so as to get Mr. Rojas annoyed, when to end everything he would probably sell her out. The day she told Haynes about it, she seemed discouraged and inclined to give up the struggle. Why I feel so sorry for Mrs. Rose. "I have it all around me, Mr. Haynes," she ended. "I don't know where to look. I have to fix my eyes above to keep my courage," she said. Miss Atwell, who slept with her, said Mrs. Rose still cried at nights, and her temper during the day was tempestuous. Once or twice he heard her fly out at Phyllis. Haynes really thought that she should try to keep more control of herself. Until one day, nearly a year after he was living in the house, he went into the kitchen for the first time, As soon as he was fairly inside, he was in the mouth of hell. The big three-decked stove was going. The coal pots with food was going. Sorry, the big three-decked stove was going. The coal pots with food. The concrete below so hot that he could feel it through his slippers. And above, the galvanized iron roof, which the tropical sun had been warming up from the outside since morning. He could scarcely breathe and involuntarily recoiled. She came to the door smiling as usual. "You find it hot, Mr. Haynes?" "How can you stand it, Mrs. Rose?" "Poor people have no choice, Mr. Haynes. It's hard, but it's better in the hot season. When it is raining, you have to leave the hot stove to go out into the wet yard, so you catch cold." He stood at the kitchen door wondering how any mortal could stand that for so many hours, every day for so many days. "Ah, Mr. Haynes," she said, mildly self-satisfied. "Now you know, but it isn't that which troubles me. It's the thoughts. They hurt me more than the heat." He looked at her, and it struck him how much more she had changed during the months since the marriage. She still carried herself well. She was made like that, and though she had lost flesh, she remained a big woman. But it was her face which really showed most of the effect of all she had undergone. It was thinner, so thin that he could see clearly the contours of the cheekbones, the hollows in the jaws, and the long, thin chin. Now that all the flesh had gone, it was a different face. Had he never seen her after that first morning, he might have passed her in the street. But in the thin face, the strong Roman nose was more prominent than ever, the lips tighter and more firm, especially when she paused during recitals of her woes. The hair on her forehead and temples was very gray. Thin and worn she might look, and she might complain at times, but it was her courage. But if her courage was ever fundamentally shaken, Haynes never saw it. Hour after hour, all through the day and every day, she was on her feet, up and down the yard and the kitchen, in and out of the house, working, directing, exhorting her helpers to increased efforts. Frequently, she was unjust. How she quarreled! But he could forgive her this, as did everybody except Maisie. And when he realized how powerfully she was struggling to stem the tide that threatened to overwhelm her. "You have courage, Mrs. Rose," he said to her one day after they made up some accounts. She smiled a grateful smile. "But I have a friend, you know, Mr. Haynes," she said, looking at him quizzically. "Who is that, Mrs. Rose?" Surely he knew all of Mrs. Rose's friends who mattered. She threw her head back with pride, almost with exultation, and pointed upwards. "God, Mr. Haynes, he is my refuge and my strength." Side by side with her, with less responsibility, but with equal interest and spirit, worked Phyllis. Strong as was Mrs. Rose, Phyllis was stronger than she was indeed. Excuse me a second, guys. Strong as was Mrs. Rose, Phyllis was stronger than she was indeed, of exceptional physical strength. But she too was getting thinner and thinner. Oh my goodness, yes, Phyllis worked so hard. And Haynes spoke to her about it one day. Her explanation was unexpected. So we'll stop right there. So we'll pause there for now. Pause there in the middle of chapter 27. Guys, lovely folks. And we will be back on again. Not so long though. I need us to finish this book so we can get on to another interesting one. Alright, so we'll stop there for now. Alright folks, so thank you for joining me. Hope you all have a productive week ahead. And just be careful out there. I keep on saying that Jamaica is not a real place, guys. Jamaica is not a real place. Every day you have something new happening. This past week we heard of the outrageous happenings that happened at Crab Circle in Kingston. Up till now I am speechless. I don't know what to say. Can't believe that people would really do things like that. Someone would really do something like that. We just have to be careful out there. The world is just crazy. The world is crazy. Crazy. People doing some crazy stuff. But anyway, folks, thanks for joining me. Thank you so much. You guys have a productive week. And hope all your dreams and your plans come true. Have to keep on working at them every day, you know. You know, a new day is always another day to keep on trying. So if you do what you're working at your dreams and whatever didn't come true today, God's willing, you have tomorrow to make a difference. So thanks for joining me, and we'll be back on again. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. You can leave a comment, tell me what you think about my reading and such like. So take care, guys. Be careful out there. Be careful. Be careful. Bye.